under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a roll call, please.
Mr. Person?
Here.
Ms. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Corman?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Mr. Pavoni?
Here.
Ms. Breyer?
Here.
Mr. Prince?
Here.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, all present.
Thank you, Jason. So for our audience at home, you may think that the new decorations up here is so you have a better view instead of having to look at elected officials, but actually it's part of our program tonight. So with that, we'll start off with a proclamation.
Proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees called Arbor Day, which is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas the City of Renton has been recognized as Tree City USA since 2008 by the Arbor Day Foundation, and whereas trees reduce soil erosion, produce life-giving oxygen, increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business districts, improve wildlife and fish habitats, and contribute many other benefits. And whereas in 1970, Senator Gaylord Nelson introduced legislation designating a day in April as a national day to celebrate the Earth and called it Earth Day, and whereas volunteers from neighborhoods, schools, businesses, and service clubs will help the City of Renton celebrate Arbor Day and Earth Day on Saturday, April 26th by planting trees and shrubs at Gene Coulon Memorial Beach Park to restore and beautify the urban forest. Now therefore, I, Dennis Law, Mayor of the City of Renton, do hereby proclaim April 26, 2014 to be Arbor Day, Earth Day in the City of Renton, and I encourage all citizens to join me in this special observance. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Renton to be affixed this 14th day of April, 2014, signed Dennis Law, Mayor of the City of Renton.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
I move that this proclamation be adopted as read.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Corman, that this proclamation be adopted as read. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. My pleasure to present this to Terry Flatley, who's the City of Renton's Urban Forestry and Natural Resources Manager.
I'm going to throw a twist on you, Terry. How about you stand there and that'll be your backdrop this time? There. Very nice. There. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Law and City Council members. I'm glad to be here tonight to talk about Renton's 8th annual Arbor Day, Earth Day event. This year that event will take place at Coulon Park. The North Shelter will be the site of the registration beginning at 9 o'clock, and it will occur on Saturday, April 26th. At 9:30, the mayor will talk to us about Arbor Day and his love for trees. And at 10 o'clock, we'll commence with probably about 150 volunteers to plant over 500 plants along the main drive at Coulon and over by the North Picnic Shelter. And of course, our traditional noon picnic lunch will occur at the North Picnic Shelter. I have some sad news as well. This will be Bonnie Rarisich's last Arbor Day Earth Day event. I have been Bonnie's co-anchor for this event, and I will miss her enthusiasm immensely and all the support she and her staff provide us. We changed our usual format this year a little bit, and we want to present our Tree City USA Award and Growth Award at the City Council meeting instead of at our Arbor Day planting. To present Renton's 6th Tree City USA Award and its 4th Growth Award this evening is Mickey McNaughton. She works with the Washington Department of Natural Resources Urban and Community Forestry Program. Please welcome Mickey.
Thank you, Mayor Law and council members and citizens of Renton. As Terry said, I'm Mickey McNaughton. I do work for the Department of Natural Resources Urban and Community Forestry Program, but I am more than that. I am an urban forester myself. I've known Terry many years. We share a passion for trees in our urban settings. I am an urban forestry planner, and tonight I represent the Washington Community Forestry Council. I'm really excited to be here, and it's such a pleasure to be in Renton again to present your 6th Tree City USA Award, and the 4th Growth Award. Just to give you an idea how rare this conjunction is, there's only 2 other cities in all of Washington that have achieved a Growth Award every single year that they've been eligible for it. One is Bellevue. Now, they've been a Tree City for 22 years, and this is their 20th Growth Award. So you got a little catching up to do there. The other is DuPont. DuPont has been a Tree City now for 5 years and received their 3rd Growth Award this year. So you're in very rarefied company, but you are part of a wonderful community statewide. There are 83 other Tree Cities USA throughout this state. Internationally, there are 3,400 Tree Cities USA. They call them just Tree City communities in other countries such as Canada and Great Britain, but it does make you part of a grand community worldwide that cares about its trees and its communities enough to achieve the 4 basic standards of Tree City USA and go beyond that. In the case of Renton, well beyond that. I'm very pleased. If I could invite Mayor Law to make another trip to the front, please. I'm pleased and honored to present Renton with a Tree City USA Arbor Day Foundation flag for the 6th consecutive year.
Council, if I can have you join us for a moment.
You want us to stand back here?
Yes, please. You bet. Let's.
Behind our trees, yeah.
No, you don't need, you can hold your.
You see, can we need to move any of those, Kelly?
No, looks like, Don, if you were, yep, there you go. You settled in right nicely. There we go.
I love baby tree.
I've got to work around the trees. Isn't that funny? There we go. Thank you very much.
Hide out in the trees back here.
Thanks, Leslie. I won't.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, there's people out there.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Mickey, appreciate it very much. So we're going to move on now from trees to the Library Advisory Board, an update. Peter Renner.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council President Person, and council members. I'm Peter Renner, the city's Facilities Director, and I have the privilege with Terry Higashiyama of serving as the city liaison to the Renton Library Advisory Board. I would like to introduce the board members and have them stand as I do. First is Lynn King, the board chair, who will shortly be making the presentation. By the way, there are some hard copies of the PowerPoint presentation if someone would like to take that home to share with your family or friends. The other members of the board are Erica Ritchie, who couldn't be with us tonight, Lori Beeden, Susie Uri, and Catherine Plew-Smith. Thank you. I would also like to introduce Judith Delter, right here, who is the cluster manager for KCLS for both of the Renton libraries as well as the Fairwood Library. It is a bittersweet moment for us as Judith recently announced she would be retiring in May and heading out of town. Judith has worked tirelessly with a special emphasis on youth reading programs and coordinating summer learning programs with the Renton School District. She will be greatly missed, and I'm sure you join me in wishing her the best for her retirement. As you shall hear in the Renton Library Advisory Board's annual report, it has been a very productive year for the board, and much has been accomplished. Lynn, it's all yours.
Thank you. The Renton Library Advisory Board, this is actually our 2013 report, if you will, the State of the Library Board report for 2013. It's a little bit into 2014, but it's when we could get it scheduled. So we would like to show you what we've been doing for the past year and what KCLS has been doing for the past year. We're calling this our past and present in Renton. Libraries have been part of Renton for 100 years. KCLS hasn't been part of Renton for 100 years, but we've certainly enjoyed the part that KCLS has had. This is Renton Highlands past. The Renton Highlands past was just a drawing, and present. These are the board members. The pictures, there's Lori, myself. Catherine is not missing. It says she's missing. She's really right back there, but she just wasn't present when the picture was taken. Susie Ure and Erica Ritchie. We are responsible stewards of your public trust. We call ourselves the R-Lab, the Renton Library Advisory Board. We've been to commission trainings. Several of us try to come to board meetings when we can, particularly when there's library stuff being talked about. We are involved with KCLS in their civic and community engagement. There's a picture of us, including Catherine, participating in the Renton River Days Parade. We were actively involved in setting up the little library in the City of Hope downstairs. We were very pleased. One of our board meetings was at Meadowcrest Early Learning Center. And if you haven't been to Meadowcrest Early Learning Center, I really recommend it. We got an early look before it was really open, got a tour of their little library, but we were blown away. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. Catherine in particular has been very actively involved in our commitment to partner with the Renton schools. Catherine is the current council president for the PTSA in this area, and she serves as our liaison with the Renton schools. Catherine and Judith met this past year with the superintendent of schools, and that's something that we intend to continue. KCLS has been, and as Peter said, Judith in particular, but KCLS has been very active this past year with children's programs in the city of Renton. They had 8 school assemblies promoting summer reading. That included 4,000 kids. They visited 49 elementary schools and preschools, and that included 8,700 participants. One of the highlights in KCLS, particularly for parents and children, is the story time. This supports early literacy, it fosters imagination, creativity, it encourages the love of reading. And they had 294 English language story times, and the story times run all the way from babies in mommy's and daddy's arms through teenagers, so everybody's encouraged. Spanish language story time, there were 36 events with 720 participants. The teen programs are very popular in the Renton libraries. The program's called Game On, which is really not a reading program. What it is an evening program, after-school program for teens, 13 through 18, to come to the library, to play games, to board games and video games, socialize with their friends, talk to the librarians, and just really get to know the library. They had 32 sessions of Game On this past year. They have a teen volunteer council, and those students come as volunteers to do various and sundry things with the library. So some of the things that the teen volunteers do is the Book Buddies program, where younger kids, K through 4th grade, I believe, are teamed up with a team volunteer for story time, for reading, for literacy, socialization, getting to know that somebody bigger than you are likes to read. The school visits and presentations in the teen programs included 61 events with almost 7,000 students. After school is a big time in the library, and I know that all of you are library participants, and you've been into the libraries after school and seen all of the kids that are there, and they're there for serious reason. I mean, there are tutors, volunteer tutors, and sometimes teen volunteers, sometimes mentors, sometimes peer volunteer tutors that help with the after-school study zone. The adult programming this past year has been really important. This really promotes, it's the heart of libraries, the free, open, and equal access to ideas and information. That's what libraries are. The Employment 101 program was very popular. There were 90 one-hour appointments. And these are with trained volunteers. I think is this the former WorkSource person that does the
That's job.
Job Club? That's the former WorkSource person. Job Club is, again, provides training. The one-on-one is more helping with resumes, that kind of thing. The Job Club is the former WorkSource giving people how to look for a job, where to go, how to look. There were 18 sessions, 186 attendees. For 46 of those adult attendees, it was the first time they'd been in a library program. So 23 of those people got jobs. Not bad. So there were 39 adult events with 493 participants. Okay. I think this is really a big deal, especially considering Renton's honor as being such a diverse city. The KCLS programs definitely this past year have supported the English language learning with a welcoming environment for everybody. 250 sessions and 976 participants. And this was talk time, which is basically just getting together with English language speakers, setting up scenarios and speaking English. That's what it's all about. The other really important part of what KCLS did in 2013 and is continuing to do is citizenship training. They did 40 sessions of citizenship training with 160 participants, and the really big deal, click, is the first ever naturalization ceremony in a library here. Was in May of 2013, and there were 27 new citizens inducted, 16 countries represented, and lots of happy tears.
Nice.
The library KCLS serves the community in the library and beyond. You've seen the Library to Go bus all over the place. They did 10 after-school events last year with 250 participants. There have been a variety of shows. The slide that you're seeing is the Jeff Evans Magic Show that you can see was extremely popular, standing room only. One of the up-and-coming and going to be continuing up-and-coming thing that's happening in all libraries, and particularly KCLS libraries, is the ebook demos. And it really is how to use any of your electronic devices to download books. They have formal sessions, and you can see the stats for the formal sessions, but I can tell you right now that people walk into the library on a daily basis and talk to the librarians about how to download stuff on their ebooks. These are the Renton Library Advisory Goals for 2014. We intend to continue talking up the campaign for Renton and Renton Highlands libraries. We want to communicate to everybody the progress that's happening with both libraries. We intend to expand our collaboration with the Renton School District with Catherine's help. The action items right now, you have just got a little flyer. The Renton Libraries are going to celebrate 100 years of libraries in Renton. That celebration is going to be May 3rd and 4th at the Liberty Park Library. Low key, and it really isn't the actual celebration of 100 years I think it's actually June or July. June. But not knowing exactly what might be happening with that site, KCLS decided to have it earlier rather than later. The Library Advisory Board hopes to participate in neighborhood picnics, talking up libraries again, telling people how important it is to get their library card. We want to engage with the Friends in Renton Libraries. This is something we really haven't done, but the Friends are volunteers that raise money for the libraries, and we think we should know them and they should know us. We intend to continue in supportive activities for the Center of Hope as they need us. And that wraps up. This is our future, we hope. And this concludes the year 2013.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Brewer.
I just want to comment that I didn't realize all of those programs were available, like the citizenship and some of the one-on-one training. It's really amazing to be able to offer that, and for the numbers of people that have been involved in that. It's really remarkable. Good job.
Yeah.
You know, I want to really thank all of the advisory board members for the great work that you do in the community. It's really been inspiring.
Thank you.
And,
You know, it's our passion.
yeah, and it's a lot of work, and you've covered a lot of ground, and we really, really, truly appreciate it. And Judith, we wish you nothing but the best in your retirement. We're sorry to see you go, but you've been a real asset to the community. So, council, any questions, comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
Yes, I agree. Those are some wonderful programs. I'm well aware of the citizenship program that helps to bring our immigrant refugee populations through the process of becoming new Americans, new citizens, aspiring citizens. So that's wonderful. And I'm also reminded that, and Terry mentioned it, that many of those programs people don't know about, so, I mean, if a council member is saying that she wasn't aware that there's that many programs, imagine with people who are less connected and informed as we are. But those are some terrific resources. Reminds me of why I made the decision to vote to annex into KCLS, because I knew that they did have a large amount of programs that they could offer to our residents in the city. So thank you for presenting that to us today.
Thank you, Jake.
Any other comments? Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you for being here tonight. Okay, we're going to segue into a public hearing, and I see Angie moving forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Angie Mathias, and I'm a planner here with the city in the community, or the Department of Community and Economic Development. Tonight, I'm here to present to you a public hearing on the zoning for an annexation area. When we do zoning for annexation areas, we're required to hold 2 zoning public hearings, and so that's what we're doing here, is just a public hearing regarding the zoning. Excuse me. So this is sort of just a little flow chart on the annexation process, and so you can see we have lots of checks on this process, and we are here at the tail end. We have received boundary review board approval, so we're here at the second public hearing regarding the zoning. The next step would be for you to adopt the ordinances that would make this annexation effective. So we have received the King County Boundary Review Board letter. It's actually called the closing letter for completed action, that was issued March 5th of this year. So it's been approved for final action, and as I said, the final action is your action to adopt the ordinances. And the zoning for annexation areas requires 2 public hearings. This is the second. The first was held November 4th, 2013. So you can see this is a map of the city here on the left, and then sort of a blowout to the right. That this annexation area is located in the northeastern portion of the city. It's a relatively small annexation area, approximately 4.2 acres in size. It's actually just one parcel of property with one single-family house on it. And it's actually a portion of an unincorporated island, as you can see, with the city limits surrounding it entirely. There are no regulated slopes within the area. We always look at some of the critical areas of the area when we evaluate for zoning to see what's going on. There are some streams and wetlands, but they're fairly far away. There's a Class 4 stream that's approximately 600 feet to the east, and Honey Creek, which is also a Class 4 stream, is located approximately 450 feet to the south. There are, however, no wetlands on the site or within the immediate area. We also examined King County's comprehensive plan and land use, or comprehensive plan designation for the area and zoning. They have zoned it with R4, allowing 4 dwelling units per acre. King County has done that. By way of a little bit of history, back in 1996, we did pre-zone this area. As you can see, that southern portion of this larger area where the annexation area is was zoned R5. it was pre-zoned with R5. So theoretically, when the area came in, it would have been zoned with R5, but we don't have R5 zoning anymore in the city. And so that's why we're going through this process again, is to designate zoning again. So we also look at what our comprehensive plan designation is for the area. We have designated it with residential low density, and we have 3 choices of zoning within that. Resource conservation, which allows 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres, R1, which allows 1 dwelling unit per acre, and R4, which allows 4 dwelling units per acre. So then when we try to map out and decide what the zoning might be, we look at the critical areas, we look at the surrounding zoning. As you can see, the surrounding zoning is both R4 and R8, with R4 around it to the north, the east, and the south, and R8 to the west. We also look at our comprehensive plan policies to see if they help guide us in determining how to zone an area. Our policies in our comp plan say that we should zone R4 where the constraints are not extensive. And then further, another policy tells us that extensive constraints are identified as areas where there are a significant percentage of critical areas. There's pervasive critical areas that would separate developable areas. Development would be non-contiguous, so it would be split up separated by those critical areas. They're designated as urban separator, or in order for the area to develop, it would require modifications or some sort of a variance in order to meet the zoning of the area. None of these are factors in this potential annexation area, so therefore we're recommending R4 zoning that would allow those 4 dwelling units per acre. Oops, excuse me. So the this is a little bit of delayed. Final recommendation of the administration is to approve first reading of the ordinance that would effectuate this Mertens annexation. And then secondly, to approve first reading of the ordinance that rezones the Mertens annexation with Renton zoning of R4. It's consistent with our residential low density land use designation.
Okay, thank you, Angie. Any questions of Angie from council? Jason, do we have any correspondence?
No correspondence, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, this is a public hearing. If there's anybody in the audience that wanted to testify on this annexation, you're welcome to do so. Seeing none, what's the
Mr.
wish
Mayor?
of council? Yes.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Prince, seconded by Mr. Pearson, that council close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. So as Angie said, you got 2 items under ordinances tonight on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next item is administrative report. We've got 2 items to begin with to update the council on. One of them, I'm going to call Greg Zimmerman up. Greg and his staff did an update on several areas of the city that are potentially vulnerable to slides in light of the tragedy up north, so we were going to give you a briefing on that. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just set this up and we'll get going. Okay, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Greg Zimmerman, Renton's Public Works Administrator. You'll recall that last week the council requested that the administration take a look at some of the steep slope areas that exist throughout Renton, particularly in the light of the tragedy that happened in Oso, Washington, that reminded all of us that steep slopes and very rainy weather can make a hazardous situation. So we were in the process of taking a look at some of the steep slopes over the last several weeks, so the request was very well timed for us. And what we wanted to do is a windshield survey. This is not really a deep evaluation, it's not a geotechnical evaluation. We just went through some of the areas in the city that we knew had a history of landslides and earth-moving activity, and we also took a look at the City of Renton critical areas map that lists some landslide-prone areas. As you're probably aware, this was the wettest March on record, so we did have some concerns and took a look around. The critical area map is on the City of Renton's website. It's one of the COR maps that we have, and this particular map, red areas show high hazard areas for potential landslides, and the beige color is high, but the and then the light cream color is moderately high, and then green areas are unclassified. These are the steep slope areas in Renton. So we use this map, we use some of our history of landslide areas in Renton, and also we had 4 or 5 members of the public that expressed concerns in certain parts of the city. So we wanted to make sure we looked at areas that they had brought to our attention as well.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
I'm presuming that you're going to show us in closer detail those locations?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
good.
We've included some photos, and we did this windshield tour over the last 2 weeks. This first area that we looked at, we gotten a couple of members of the public that were concerned about the apartments that are located east of 1700 Lake Washington Boulevard. It's those apartments that are high on the hill between I-405 and Lake Washington Boulevard. This map shows the location, and the blue arrows on the map shows where that particular steep slope is. The apartment complex has apartments up on a higher level and then down on a lower level toward Lake Washington Boulevard. So we took some photographs that we'll show you. This is a view from the parking lot on the lower level of the apartments as you approach the slope that we're going to be looking at a little bit more closely. And you can see the higher apartments are significantly at a higher elevation than the lower level apartments. Actually, the calls that we got were from people that lived on the lower level apartments. They were concerned about the stability of the hillside. This is moving closer to the slope, and you can see there's a pretty steep bluff back there between the trees. That bluff has been there for a while. It's not a brand new development, but we wanted to take a closer look at it to assure ourselves of its stability and see what, if anything, had happened recently that could be noted in our survey. As we get a little bit closer yet, you can see a couple of telltale signs that there has been a little bit of activity on this bluff. You can see some trees at the top that are kind of undermined, the roots are exposed, and that's a sign that there's been a little bit of sloughing of material. There were also some piles of material at the bottom, not massive movements, but a little bit. You could see that there had been some recent activity on the condition of the bluff that didn't seem to be like an imminently huge problem, but something that needed more looking into than our windshield survey. We then went to the top to take a look at what it looked like from the apartment complex, the building on the top, and just to show you also the setback. So we're on the sidewalk here behind the apartments, and you can see how it falls off to the steep slope toward the lower apartments. So what we're going to do, this is all privately owned, it's not on public property or public right-of-way. We're going to write a letter to the owners of this particular apartment and recommend that they have a geotechnical consultant come out, take a look at the slope, assess the stability of the slope, and make recommendations on the safety and the stability so that we can be assured that we don't have any impending problems with this particular slope. This was the one of all the ones I'm going to show you that we thought that needed to be looked at fairly quickly so that we can...
Greg?
Yes.
I seem to remember that when they built this, there was concerns about that, and the city did at that time require some extra geotechnical evaluation of it. And I don't know if that was included, if we still have those reports, or...
I'm hoping that we have those filed. I think it was the better part of 20 years ago, so
Yes,
we're going to have to
was.
look for that and see if we can find that in our files.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
Greg, what is the mechanism that we have in place in terms of responsibility of who bears the cost of these geotechnical reports?
If it's on city property, it would be a city responsibility. If it's on private property, we're making a request, and hopefully the owners will see their way toward that being a prudent thing to do, since it's their property and their buildings on the property. If the owner should just choose not to do that, not to do the evaluation, there are some property upkeep zoning codes that we could probably consult and see what kind of backing we would have to actually strengthen the request that they do these studies.
Okay, I'm just thinking, from a, public safety, perspective and, property owners or people that dwell at, the bottom of these developments, and they're interested in wanting to have, the type, and of course us as well. We want to make sure, that's why you're presenting this to us.
Right, that's right.
That, property owners are responsibly making sure that we're mitigating any of these kinds of potential risks.
That's exactly right, and that's why we're sending them a letter, and we're encouraging them strongly to hire some professionals to come out and take a look at it. We don't want to have to, take other action. We'll have to see what that might be, but, we would hope that property owners would be responsible and at least go that far.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms.
I'm just assuming, Greg, that these are both owned by two different
No.
owners?
No,
It is the
actually,
same,
there's
both upper
several
and lower?
parcels, but they're under the same ownership.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
So that makes it a better situation for us.
And Greg,
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
just to clarify, I mean, we can't just go, as a city, we just can't go on somebody's property and do a,
Well, that's a little debatable, and
Is it?
I'm not going to spend a lot of legal time trying to explore every option that we would have at this point in time. But clearly, if they were to refuse to do it, because with our untrained eyes, we're a little concerned. So we're going to go to the next step if we have to, but we're not really sure what that would mean.
And if I may?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk about that particular property anymore because I don't know anything about it. But I guess in general, if we had steep slopes somewhere and a geotechnical engineer looked at it, maybe it could be as simple as helping come up with recommendations how to redirect runoff, right? I mean, we might be talking about very sensible changes that could really protect the property and might be straightforward in some cases.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so they can take, the geotechnical engineer can take core samples from the slope and do some survey information, and also take a look at the foundation of the building on top to determine how sturdy that is. And if, I don't remember if it was pile driven or if it's a slab foundation, it was a long time ago, that type of thing that we, that might give us a better feeling for the design of the facility.
Good, thanks.
The second stop that we made was above the Narco site. This location is Renton Hill. As you know, there's a fairly steep slope to the northeast of Renton Hill down to the Narco site, and there's been a little bit of soil movement and activity and sloughing over the years. So we wanted to go up there and see what we could see in terms of anything that might have happened during this very wet March.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Taylor?
Greg, for those people that are at home that don't know the Narco site, they do know the dog park.
Right.
We just kind of point them to that so they know exactly that's just as you go underneath, you pass the community center, on the trail side.
Right.
You're going past the dog park and you look up there to the right and that's what you see.
That's what the slope above that, yes, exactly. So this was a photograph from a location looking down from the homes that back up to the slope that goes down to the Narco site. And we didn't see in our quick, as I call it, windshield survey, any evidence of real recent movement there over the March period. But over time, we know there has been a little bit of sloughing here and there. For the most part, the houses are pretty well set back from the slope, so that's one thing that's encouraging. We did find one location that there had been some local sloughing behind a couple of the houses, so we're going to keep our eye on that and periodically inspect that area and see if we see anything that leads us to heavier concerns. We'll just continue to monitor that area.
Good.
Okay, the next area that we stopped at was on the west side of the city. This is Renton Avenue South in the West Hill vicinity, and diagonally going through this area where the blue arrow points is actually a Seattle City Light electrical power easement. Where that easement goes over Renton Avenue South, there's quite an embankment in that location. Some of you may be familiar with it. The good thing about that is there are no houses on top of the embankment. It's just the power line stretched across the street up there. So although the actual embankment looks a little alarming, there's no residences that could be impacted by this. This is a photo of that particular embankment we're talking about. Down below it, we put up some Jersey barriers. So what happens is when there is a periodic sloughing down this embankment, our crews come back and clear out the area behind the Jersey barrier just to give it a little bit more room. We need to talk to Seattle City Light about the stability of this slope, so we're going to be in contact with them and see if we need to do, between us and them, any geotechnical evaluation of the slope. This one I'm not as concerned about just because it's not in proximity of residences, but if a big piece of the slope came down, it could land in the road.
Okay.
The next location we went to was right behind Fred Meyer on Hardy Avenue. This location is there's a steep embankment behind Fred Meyer, and there's a kind of a flat place there where people park their cars alongside the street, and then there's a steep slope on the private property that off of Maple up there that overlooks that parking area. So this was a photo of it. Once again, we didn't see any signs of real recent movement of the slope. Over March, we couldn't see anything that looked like scalped slopes or anything, but there have been some trees that have come down over time that you can see, and we do have a little bit of concern. We don't think that the slope could actually reach Hardy because it's quite a bit set back from Hardy there, but we do think that cars that park in that area could be subject to some of these trees or branches coming down. So we're talking about possibly putting up some barricades so that that portion, we hold parking cars back from the slope so that if any of these trees do come down, parked cars or people going to and from those cars would be out of harm's way.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Breyer.
is this private property?
Yes.
Thank you.
The slope is pretty set back and it's on the private property.
Thank you.
Okay, the next area here is a pretty well-known area to some of you. This is Rainier Avenue across the street from the airport. We've had a history of significant slides on this slope. The slope isn't quite as steep as some of the other areas we looked at, but it is slide-prone just from its past performance. And so we took a few photographs here and went up to the top and looked down from the residential neighborhood above this slope. Once again, we didn't see any signs that any earth had moved recently. We didn't see any cracks. We didn't see any scalped areas that showed that there have been recent slides. But what's happening over time with this slope is it kind of encroaches on our sidewalk. The toe of it creeps across the sidewalk. You can see in this photo that the city put up some Jersey barriers and some ecology blocks to kind of hold the slope back. And periodically we go through there and clear out the sidewalk again behind it because some dirt gets over the top of it. I think what we need to do is do this same type of approach, a small project, further north on Rainier, because at the north end of this photograph, we have a portion of the slope that's taking even more custody of the sidewalk, so to speak, and it doesn't have the Jersey barriers or the ecology blocks there. And we think we need to support the toe of the slope a little bit better. So we're talking about doing this type of a project in more locations up and down the western bank of along Rainier. So that's a step we'll take.
Mr. Mayor, I see Chip still with us here. Earlier in the presentation, Cliff Long mentioned some development that's going to take place across from the airport tower. Are we talking about the same property, Chip?
This is a different piece of property. This is, I think, a little bit farther to the north.
I think it's north, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Now the big one that we all are very familiar with, it's along the Maple Valley Highway. You can see in this photo I-405 and then the Maple Valley Highway. That whole northeastern bank tends to slip and slide over the years, and we've all seen, anytime you drive down there, you'll see new areas and new scraped areas that you can see there's been some sloughing of material. So that's why these arrows really show the entire extent of that embankment. These are some photos that we, just driving along, showed that there had been fairly recent movement. There's some good news about this particular bank, and that is we've all noticed a distinct improvement since the developments were put up on the top of the hill. That's Liberty Ridge and the other development, the residential developments. What happened with those developments is the surface water facilities collected the runoff water and contained it and kept it out of the hillside. And we've had the slides have been much less severe since those developments went in. It's a little counterintuitive. We're used to developments going in causing slides. In this case, the developments have mitigated the slides because they've been preventing the stormwater from saturating the hillside. Okay. So that's a situation that's actually improved, but there's enough of these continuing small sloughing actions. This is the top of the slope where you can see some vegetation undermined. That's always a sign that you've had recent slides, that when you see root masses up above that are undermined. This is another scarp that you see along the slope. This whole slope needs a geotechnical evaluation. We need to do it, the city does, so we're going to be looking for funding to do a geotechnical evaluation of the slope, similar to what we're asking some of these property owners to do on their property, to tell us if we need to take any remedial action and steps that we can do to make sure that the slope doesn't come down and first of all, impact the highway, because we have had incidents of that, trees and slopes coming down, pieces of the slope coming down, and also to make sure that the residents that live up above the slope are protected. So that'll be a work item that we put together. Moving to the east along Maple Valley Highway, this is the last place we visited in our windshield survey. This is the Maplewood Glen subdivision, and up above it is Liberty Ridge, you can see on this overhead. And we did get a call from a resident that lived in Maplewood Glen along Southeast 5th Street and was worried about some erosion and small slides that they had seen back there where the arrows are pointing on this photograph. We have an access road that goes in there because there's a surface water facility that we access and maintain in this area. The parcel itself is a privately owned piece of property. So we went in there and we saw, again, kind of a bluff or a scarp that is quite a distance away from the properties, from the backyard along Southeast 5th Street. There's a good distance between the scarp and the properties, and there's also a good distance between the scarp and the properties at Liberty Ridge up on the hill. But there certainly was signs that there had been some sloughing during recent sloughing. There was piles of material, and there was some undermining of vegetation again that did get our attention. This is another photo of the bluff that is back there in the woods. So similar to what we are doing with the other property on Lake Washington Boulevard, we're going to request this property owner to take a look, have a geotechnical engineer come out and look at this property, recommend about its stability and whether there are any remedial actions that are needed to be taken. Our last photo was we went up to Liberty Ridge and looked down the slope from the top, because it's always good to see what it looks like from the top of the slope as well. And this is from one of the backyards up there. You can see how the slope breaks away from the backyards and heads down the hill from Liberty Ridge down to State Route 169. So just really quickly, a summary of the actions we're going to take for the property to the east of 1700 Lake Washington Boulevard, and also this property that we just looked at that's behind Maplewood Glen. We're going to ask that the property owners do a geotechnical evaluation and check out the stability of these particular slopes. Renton Hill above Narco, Renton Avenue, we're going to continue, and Hardy, we're going to continue to monitor those on a regular basis to make sure that we don't have large activities happening there with earth moving, and take remedial action if we see anything happening there. And the Maple Valley Highway will do our own geotechnical evaluation.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Corman.
Thank you so much for this report. It's really good to see that you've made your way around so much of the city. So I was wondering, did you have another look at that area that came down during the earthquake? Or do you know?
We didn't go back there. We kind of confined our review to within the Renton city limits, and that place that came down in the earthquake is actually in unincorporated King County, but it's an area of some concern. I agree with you.
Okay, thank you for reminding me. I forgot it was King County, right? It was
Cedar River.
Yeah, further up the Cedar River.
Up the Cedar River, it's the upper Maplewood area, but it's outside of the city limits.
Right.
From,
Any other questions from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Greg, that slope out of Maplewood Heights that we were just talking about,
Yeah.
could you get with King County, send King County a letter or something, telling them about our concerns? Because we're very, very fortunate that when that slid, we didn't lose anybody. And secondly, I know it's in the county, but we're also very fortunate we had 2 city employees that responded in a very proactive way and dug a channel out of that river, or we would have had a real disaster. So,
We'll do that.
concerns
We'll go out and take a look at it ourselves, and then we'll report what we see to King County and ask them to assess it.
Yeah.
thank you.
And then I had one more, if I
Go
may.
ahead.
Yeah, maybe for the future also, if you could look, there's next to Honey Creek, there's a sewer line, 1.5 mile long, access road or so, maybe it's a mile long. And I've noticed it's a great hiking trail too, by the way, a lot of people enjoy it for hiking. But I've noticed you can look up that and see a lot of sloughing, and it seems like it's pretty close to buildings up at the top of that.
Is that the Devil's Elbow area?
Basically, if you start at Devil's Elbow and then walk up the up Honey Creek.
Okay.
Yeah, we have an access road actually, so you could do a windshield survey.
Okay.
But it just seems like some of those slide areas are getting kind of close to some of the buildings. So
Okay, we'll take a look at that
Okay.
as well.
yeah, good. Thanks. But I appreciate the work. Great
Okay,
job.
well, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Next item we have for you is, I promised you some update on Mr. Brad Atkins, who last week was concerned about Piper's Bluff. And so Chip has some information for you on that.
Thank you, Mayor Law, council members, Chip Vincent from Community and Economic Development. And since Mr. Adkins testified under public comment during the last week's council meeting, Neil Watts from our Development Services Division has had the opportunity to work closely with Mr. Atkins as well as some other affected property owners by this proposed subdivision. Piper's Bluff is a 28-lot subdivision just on the east side of Hoquiam across from Hazen High School. There have been several issues related to this project, related to stormwater and access and appropriate controls being put in place during the stormy winter that we've had this last year. We have been working closely with the developer and working through all those. But specifically with respect to Mr. Atkins, we have worked with he and 2 other property owners that basically have the same issue, and that is regarding the accessibility of their individual single-family home lots from the road being provided as part of the subdivision. And I want to share with you, Neil's worked really closely with the developer as well of Piper's Bluff this last week, and we reached an agreement at this point with respect to the access issue that we will not move forward with the plat until there has been a proposal that's been signed off on by all 3 property owners who are affected by the access. And the developer has agreed to that, so now we're working on the specific details for how that's going to actually happen. But we are feeling really good that we're going to reach a solution that works for both the developer as well as the affected citizens. You will be receiving a memo from Neil that really outlines a lot of the other specifics with respect to some of the issues we've been working with regarding that project. But that was the main issue, and I just want to share with you that progress has been made.
Thanks, Chip. And we will let you know if there's any other developments in regards to that development.
Great. Really
Okay.
great. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to, was there anything else, Mr. Covington?
No, it's all in here.
Okay. Moving on to audience comment, we have a couple people signed up. Both of them know the rules. Start off with Paul Olet.
Good evening, I'm Paul Olet from Renton. I have a couple of items that I would like to bring up. The first one that I want to point out, I guess, is relative to an issue that was printed in the Renton Reporter about the Renton city budget, okay? And I know that this was discussed at the go ahead.
The council retreat?
The retreat, exactly, the council retreat. However, a couple of things that came to my attention as I was reading this article, and as a citizen and taxpayer, it kind of bothered me a little bit. Now, let me share with you a little bit, a couple of items that you might want to consider or evaluate. One of the gist of the report was they're looking for, that your city is looking for additional revenue. That's the gist of the whole thing. And in fact, the possibilities that were suggested by the administration was to increase the B&O tax, that it would be paid by the businesses. And yet this kind of bothers me, because here we are trying to redevelop the downtown area, and yet you're going to tax the very people that you're trying to get in here. So I wonder if that's...
Mr. Olet, and I apologize for interrupting you.
Right.
But I really want you to be clear that all that's been presented to the council are options.
I understand.
So, because we understand exactly what you're
Oh, yeah.
saying. So nobody has decided that we're gonna.
And I
tax the
believe
business
that,
community.
and I agree with it. And basically, I'm trying to make a couple of observations that might affect the options that you're having,
Okay.
okay?
Sorry to interrupt
Because the other thing that I was looking at is that the administration is also recommending a bond issue for capital projects. But then in the report, and so on, at least it's not written in here, I don't see any evaluation by the administration to see where you can cut expenses as opposed to just increasing revenue. You see, people like myself on fixed income, we don't have any additional income to come up with. And so we appreciate being able to live within our means. So that's the only reason. It's not a big deal. It's something for hopefully that you might consider, okay? The other quick thing that I want to talk about is, it was interesting tonight that on the library thing, you had both the budget as well as the presentation. I was very interested in that. The thing that I want to point out is that in the discussion of the budget, okay, I saw the only thing that was discussed was relative to the construction budget, okay, the construction costs rather. If you recall, we had made multiple presentations here questioning the KCLS program budget, the program cost. If I recall, the presentation here tonight talked about the $6 or $7 million construction cost. Basically, if I recall, you have a $10 million program budget. The issues that we always presented were never really a contradiction to the construction cost as much as it was the KCLS allocated funds. And that's all, nothing in the audit and so on that was discussed with respect to that. I would hope that the program manager, Peter, and so on, the administration would, if tonight you looked at possibility of not having enough money for the construction, but take a look at the program budget. You have the $10 million. Where did it go? A lot of it is in the KCLS expenses. I have a little quick email from David Keys, because David Keys and I spent a lot of time evaluating this program budget. And here's some of his comments. On a number of occasions, Paul and I decided to clear the majority of our criticism was not directed to the construction estimate by the design team, but rather at what the KCLS did manipulating, expanding the larger set of the overall project budget. It was these project budget procedures executed in-house at KCLS and agreed to by Renton that we believe were used to mislead the Renton residents. Clearly, Robinson was not contracted to provide the audit of KCLS overall program budget. I don't know who in this administration wrote the the contract request for proposal to Robinson, but they certainly did not include a request to evaluate the program budget. It was not included in the thing. And that's the reason for my comment here, okay? My time is almost up. I have a quick thing that if you want to take a moment, I want to make a presentation to the city, donation, okay? And I agree, I know that I will be working with the Parks Department and so on with this thing. You take a moment, please. I have here.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a
My
motion to
time
give
is up.
him a little
If
extra
you'd
time.
rather, I would wait until the end and show you this at this time. I'd like.
Oh, go ahead, Paul, because I interrupted you.
Okay.
So go ahead.
How do we put this on? Auto? I'm sorry. Thank you, Jay. Okay. This, in 1950, when I was at the university in Boston, as one of my structural design projects, I built this little model bridge. It's 4 foot long, and it's made out of sheet metal. It's a Fink truss, you know, design. And in fact, I have another picture here of the bridge. I've had this in my attic all these years, and at this point, I don't think my children will want it. In fact, there's a picture where it was, you can see it in the background over a little stream. This picture was taken there in Boston. Okay? Anyway, I would like to donate this, my little bridge, and install it over there in Coon Park, across the was it Jones Creek, I believe they call it? I understand Terry was telling me that we might have to go talk to the fisheries department, but I hope that the city would be able to work that out. I'd like to donate that and get some way of installing it there and anchoring it so nobody will steal it, like they stole the little bird thing that was hanging on a tree the other day. Somebody hung it over there, and 3 days later it disappeared. So, but I'd like your permission to continue with work with the Parks Department and see if we can get this accomplished, if that's okay.
Absolutely, Paul. I appreciate that very much. I know there very well likely will be restrictions putting anything over the creek, and so, but yeah, absolutely.
Right. Thank you very much.
Terry will be the one who can tell you. Thank you. Howard McComber.
Howard McComber, I live in the Renton Highlands. We had a wonderful report on the Committee of the Whole about the economic upswing that we have in everything. We have lots and lots of new houses and new buildings and all kinds of wonderful things happening. Our Renton Highlands Library, which I appreciate you guys saving, is going forward. That's going to be fabulous. And these things are all very positive. My concern is just about the people, because we have, the most important thing in the city are the people who live here. This is it. This is what we're all about, and who select you, and that you're caring about. And we need to have help. Okay, I live in the Highlands, been there for a long time. We need more helpers in the Highlands. There are several thoughts that are going through, I'm going to try to make sense of it. When I talked to Chip about this, I've talked to many of you about it, the great thought would be that if we could take the people who are in need and sprinkle them through the town, that would be great, and then all sorts of wonderful things would happen. Two big problems with that. Number one is money, because it takes money to sprinkle people in high-priced areas. And there's no magic wand, so that one's gone. There's not going to be sprinkling people through the area. What we are going to have to do is work on it, on having housing that's available for people. And I'm not the only guy. There's many guys who have wonderful intelligence and ideas, and they can come up with thoughts. But I've got some for the Highlands that I've been working with. I'd like to kind of move them forward as much as we can. This has to do with providing owner-occupied housing in our area. We have in our area 2 schools which are in in dire straits, to be very honest with you. They're wonderful schools, fabulous staff, but they need to have people from the community who can help them. We do have people who do, but we need more. We need people in our areas just kind of to leaven the load. We have the Highlands Community School, the Highlands Elementary School, and they have a fabulous principal, and she is fabulous. And we have Honeydew on up. And what we have here is a lot of people who need help, and we're going to have more people come into the area. We have the Renton Housing Authority, and I wish Mark tripled the money that he has. But the people who he normally provides for, and the neighbors that I know, the people that I know, are not necessarily the worker bees that we need to have in there. So we need to have more. We need to have people who will own, buy the property, live in the property, live in the area, have skin in the game. Because if you live in the area and you're working in it, you help improve the area, you help improve the neighborhood. If you want to take a little drive through our area, I don't have to tell you which houses are owner occupied. Really hard. With a windshield guess, you can probably guess many of them. And what we want is to have that sort of thing. So I'm looking for cooperation. We've had great cooperation in the city. We've had Rainier and all the wonderful things that have happened down Rainier, which I think is fabulous, and more development and projects, and hundreds of people being able to have houses on top of stores, and those are great things. But those people aren't necessarily the same ones who go work in the school and go work in the community. And so while I love those projects, and I'm in favor of every one of them, I want to have some projects that are about people. I can try to not say the wrong words here, but people who are not rich, who are workers in the community who care. And we need to have housing for our diverse group. We have a very diverse group, and the more owner-occupant housing that they can have, the better. I'm pushing for that, and I know that Don has been helping me to get it scheduled. I'd love it scheduled as soon as possible, because I want to roll on this. But our real hope here, we can make a dynamic difference as we have more owner-occupants in our areas, especially in the areas where we don't have as many and where things are tough. I realize my time is coming up, but welcome any ideas that any of you have on it. But I do have some things ready to go if I can get help and support, and that's what we need. We win in this town by cooperation, by working together, and I'm asking for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. We have 4 items for council consideration. Are there any items a council member would like pulled?
Mr. Mayor, seeing none, I move the consent agenda be adopted as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Person, second by Mr. Prince, that council adopt the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to unfinished business, Mr. Person.
None.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes, I have several transportation committee reports.
A Transportation Aviation Committee report. Supplemental agreement number 2 with Petite for Logan Avenue North Airport Way to North 8th Street Improvement Project. The Transportation Aviation Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute supplemental agreement number 2 with Petite Incorporated, increasing the contract amount to a new total of $788,845 and extending the completion date of the agreement to December 31st, 2015 in order to prepare final design, Cedar River Bridge to North 6th Street for the Logan Avenue North Airport Way to North 8th Street Improvement Project. This is signed by the committee chair and a substitute member.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Palmer.
I move that council concur with the committee report.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Palmer, seconded by Mr. Person, that council concur with the Transportation Committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The next report is to authorize the budget increase for the Southwest 27th Street Strander Boulevard Extension Project. The Transportation Aviation Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation for the Southwest 27th Street Strander Boulevard Extension Project Phase 1, Segment 2A, to exceed the allocated budget by $440,000 using the Cash Flow Equalization Fund. Recognizing larger complex transportation projects may need a bridge loan for construction costs while additional funding is secured, the $5.5 million Cash Flow Equalization Fund was established in 2012. This is signed by the committee chair and substitute member.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Palmer.
I move the council concur with the committee report.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Palmer, seconded by Mr. Person, that council concur with the Transportation Committee report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
And that's it, only
Thank
two.
you. Mr. Corman.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Taylor.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Pavoni.
No unfinished, Mr. Mayor, but I do have one issue I'd like to bring up.
Okay.
A couple of weeks ago, we had a volunteer proposal come to our committee, and it was chaired because it was because we didn't have all the information at the time. And I think that we need to bring it back up again. I don't know, I'm not exactly sure how we do that, if we bring it to the committee as a whole, or how we're going to handle that. But I don't think that we should have volunteers be treated disrespectfully and just kind of sitting there being tabled. So I think it should be something that we should handle and at least address at this point. We had issues at the time that I guess the biggest concern was that there was a long line of people waiting for this position or something of like that, and I don't think that's the case at this point. So.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Corman.
Can we be reminded a little bit more about what the specific issue was?
Well, it was the appointment for the city center position. Rich Zwiker, I guess it was, for the city center position. Yeah. And the concerns at the time was the fact that there were a long line of people for this position. I just don't know that sitting on it is the right way to handle this.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
I chair that committee, and we put it on hold for the time being. The issues were not that there were other members, or other community members who were interested in the position. There was a question as to whether or not a former council member can immediately, come back in that type of a role when there are other community members who would like to volunteer for that type of position. And at the same time, there had been a number of individuals who had called and emailed and contacted me who had concerns about Mr. Zwicker and his manner of operating in that kind of a role, in that kind of a position. And so that was the reason that we put it on hold. There were multiple reasons for that.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Person.
Sure sounds like a policy decision for the entire council to me, so therefore I move the nomination of Rich Zwicker to the community, Downtown Community Plan Committee be moved to Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Person, seconded by Mr. Pavoni, that the topic about the appointment of Rich Zwicker to the city center plan be referred to Committee of the Whole. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
The ayes have it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
The other thing that was brought up that really caught my attention was when we were told that there were 13 people on that committee, and it's rather unwieldy that it was admitted that it was too big of a group. And so why add to a group that it's already felt is too big? So that was the other issue that...
Chip, did you want to address that?
And Mr. Mayor, I would also like a roll call on that vote.
I don't think you're the only no that I heard.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Chip Vincent from Community and Economic Development, and I was in attendance at the Community Services Committee, and I shared with the Community Service Committee members that large groups are very challenging, and originally we had 18 people appointed to the City Center Community Planning Board. The question was asked, you know, why hadn't we been seeking out people to fill some of those vacant positions? And we said, we believe through just the natural process that the group would slowly cull itself down to a more reasonable, more workable size. And also in addition to the fact that nobody had applied to be on the community planning board. So we simply were watching this, you know, come down to a more reasonable, workable size from 18 down to 13 with the knowledge that we hadn't had any new applications. But however, with the application of Rich Zwicker, who is intimately familiar with the City Center Community Plan, had expressed a strong interest in desire in a volunteer role to be able to work with the City Center Community Planning Board. And the first application we had received, since we sent out the original notice, it seemed appropriate for us to advance him for recommendation, given the value that he'd bring to the board, to the Community Services Committee, and to the council as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Chip.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
Yes, I would also like to comment that also during that meeting, there was a gentleman who showed up. His name was Michael Riley, and he had mentioned that he had applied for that that committee, and he was turned down.
Yeah.
And so we had other dialogue in terms of why not go back to people who had previously wanted to be a part of that advisory group and offer them another chance at it. He later had mentioned that he had no interest in it at this point, but still the question came up that that should have been another avenue to pursue finding qualified individuals who are interested in being on that board, and to make that available to community members. The whole idea of creating, you know, more community capital in terms of strengthening our outreach and throughout our communities is finding new people, finding individuals who want to make a contribution to these kinds of boards, as opposed to recycling the same people through over and over again, especially when there has been indication from community members that there's been some concern about specific individuals. So that was my reason for saying, let's stop, let's, you know, hold up, and let's get more information, and so.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Breyer.
I just want to clarify something that Greg said, because it was my understanding, like when we did the Highlands Task Force, that was made up of people in that community, and it was my understanding that as we went through and did these area plans, that the representatives would be people that lived or worked in those communities, the same as the Benson and some of those. And were you just saying, Greg, that you wanted to expand it outside that area?
No. That is, look, those types of groups work best when there are people, and as I recall, we went through the number of people who are on that board, and we identified all of the individuals in terms of the proximity of the relationship they had with the community in the neighborhood, and that's important. Simply saying that an elected official, okay, for a former council member who hasn't even been away from this role for a year yet. And in fact, I would entertain us having a conversation also about, you know, the possibility of making it whereas an elected has to wait a year or two before being put on a board like that, just so that we can create more opportunities for other community members who haven't had an opportunity to get involved in this capacity.
Well, I just have to say that I haven't seen a big rush of council members trying to serve on all the boards and commissions that we have available to us, and so whether or not this is a real concern is something the council can decide during your committee of the whole meeting. So Chip, thank you for your information, and we'll get that scheduled. Yes, Mr. Person.
Well, I just have a question for Chip and kind of put him on the spot. I guess, yeah, and forget who the councilman is, but do you guys have a problem with former council people sitting on the board?
So maybe instead of having a staff member get stuck in the middle of a political debate, why don't I answer that? But that obviously they've moved his name forward as the best candidate for the position, and then in their opinion, unless you guys don't agree with their opinion, is that he would do a good job serving on that committee. So during the committee of the whole, If you want them to make another presentation as to why they think Rich Zwicker would serve on that committee, well, they can do that, and you guys can make the decision.
Well, Mr. Mayor, since it has been referred, I guess it has been referred to committee, but I haven't heard anything this evening that would make me feel that Mr. Zwicker shouldn't be appointed. So therefore, I'd move that we, council, approve him as a member of that board.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Clerk, if an item has been referred into committee, can we on the floor make a motion to pull it out of committee and to take a vote on it right now?
Yes, you can. You can make a motion to pull it out of committee to take a vote.
Thank you.
Okay, so your motion is to pull it out of committee and approve Rich Zwicker
Approve
for the...
Rich's appointment.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Person, seconded by Mr. Prince, that the topic of the appointment be taken out of committee of the whole, and that Rich Zwicker be appointed to the committee.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Corman?
Yeah, one thing as I make my vote on this is, my bias would be to be as inclusive as we can with as many people as we can as we do these community plans. I'm respectful of Mr. Vincent's comments about the more people on the committee, the more unwieldy it becomes, and I get that, believe me. At the same time, there's value in making room for all the voices and letting them sort themselves out. So, because then everybody feels like they're stakeholders. So, I think that we should continue to, as much as possible, allow when the community wants to participate in one of these in their neighborhood to try and allow it.
And we certainly do. And we have a process that the department heads have been following in terms of our boards and commissions, so that it isn't a favoritism type of situation where they review both the job that's required of these commissioners and board members, and they try and they advertise it, get the word out through the newspaper, through the website, and announce it anywhere we can, and then they review through a pretty good process all of the applications to come up with the best candidates. And consequently, because of the process they've had, we've had better boards and commissions that have been more active and more effective for the city. So, we can change the process if you choose to, but right now, they're doing a very good job of providing you with that. And I think your comment is valid, and certainly we wouldn't change that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just add to that, I think, size is a relative, and depends on the complexity of the committee. For example, the Renton Airport Advisory Committee that Councilwoman Palmer serves on has 27 members and alternates. So it's certainly a large committee, but it has been effective, and it just depends on, what the topics are, what we want in terms of representation, and then it's up to staff to try to work that to make sure that everybody feels like they're involved and participating.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? We're going to do a roll call on this. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
The ayes have it, so would you do a roll call, Jason?
Mr. Person?
Aye.
Ms. Palmer?
No.
Mr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Opposed.
Mr. Pavoni?
Aye.
Ms. Breyer?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
5 ayes, 2 noes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, the motion carries. Okay, let's see. Ms. Breyer, you're still up for
Yes,
unfinished
Finance
business.
Committee has unfinished committee reports to report. Finished
Hey.
business.
Finance Committee report, approval of claims and payroll vouchers. The Finance Committee approves for payment on April 14th, 2014, claim vouchers 328312 through 328602, 5 wire transfers, and 1 payroll run with benefit withholding payments totaling $3,846,970.43, and payroll vouchers including 725 direct deposits and 63 payroll checks totaling $1,512,370.59. This is signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms.
I
Breyer.
move that council concur with the Finance Committee report.
Second?
It's been moved by Ms. Breyer, seconded by Ms. Palmer, that council concur with the Finance Committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The next report is regarding the 2014 carry forward budget amendment. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve an amendment in the 2013-2014 budget appropriations in the amount of $81,275,518, with the total amended budget to be $601,657,988 for the biennium. The committee further recommends that the ordinance regarding this matter be presented for first reading. This is signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Breyer.
move that council concur with this committee report.
Second?
It's been moved by Ms. Breyer, seconded by Ms. Palmer, that council concur with the Finance Committee report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
The next report is regarding the King County Parks Property Tax Levy Agreement. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve a special King County Parks Property Tax Levy Agreement with King County in consideration of the mutual undertakings resulting from the King County Parks Proposition 1 levy approved by voters on August 6, 2013. Funds collected will be distributed to the city through 2019 and will be utilized for city park system projects or the repair, replacement, and improvement of local parks and trails, park open space and trail acquisition, and park and trail development. The committee recommends that the budget be adjusted and proceeds be accounted for in the Capital Improvement Fund separately from the 2007 King County Expansion Levy Proposition 2 voter-approved funds. The committee further recommends that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the agreement. This is signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms.
I
Breyer.
move that council concur with the finance committee report.
Second?
It's been moved by Ms. Breyer, seconded by Ms. Palmer, that council concur with this Finance Committee report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I want to make a comment on this. It's just kind of a sore spot with me, but I'm glad that we're being supportive, and obviously we want to receive the approximately $190,000 a year that we'll receive from King County from the parks. But to get to what Mr. Ouellette was saying earlier and what we talk about on the structural deficit of what the city faces in being able to provide services and maintenance and all of the things that we need to run the city, this is a great example. $2.1 million is collected from this community for this countywide proposition, and we get $190,000 of it in return for our local parks. So there's a lot of money being spent by our taxpayers that don't go into Renton Parks, and it's just part of regional systems. And unfortunately, Renton, Kent, Auburn, Federal Way can vote these down, but Seattle and other parts of the county vote them in. And so, you know, we're pretty much stuck with that. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I love King County, but I'd like to get more money from them for all the money we put into it. Okay, Jason.
Okay. The final Finance Committee report is regarding creating a prosecuting attorney position and converting a legal assistant to a paralegal position. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve the request to, 1, create and fill a new position for prosecuting attorney, 2, convert an existing legal assistant position to a paralegal position, and 3, include the associated budget increase in the carry-forward budget adjustment. This is signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms.
I
Breyer.
move that the council concur with this finance committee report.
Second?
It's been moved by Ms. Breyer, seconded by Ms. Palmer, that council concur with the final Finance Committee report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Prince?
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Moving on to resolutions and ordinances, we have 3 ordinances for first reading, and we have 4 for second and final reading.
Okay, the first ordinance is regarding the Americans annexation. Ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, annexing approximately 4.2 acres bounded by the north and western boundaries are next to existing city limits and Northeast 16th Street and 145th Place Southeast. This is file number A13004.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Ms. Breyer, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The next ordinance is regarding the zoning classification for the Mertens annexation. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, establishing the zoning classification of the certain property annexed within the City of Renton from R4, urban residential 4 dwelling units per acre King County zoning to R4 residential 4 dwelling units per acre City of Renton zoning. This is also the same file, A13004.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next city council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Ms. Breyer, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
And the final ordinance for first reading is regarding the carry forward budget amendment. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending the City of Renton fiscal years 2013-2014 biennial budget as adopted by ordinance number 5682 and thereafter amended by ordinance numbers 5686, 5692, and 5699 in the amount of $81,275,518.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Breyer.
I move that the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Ms. Breyer, seconded by Ms. Palmer, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
And the first ordinance for second and final reading is adopt the International Building Code with city amendments. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Section 45050 of Chapter 5, Building and Fire Prevention Standards of Title 4 Development Regulations of City Code, adopting by reference the 2012 International Building Code with the city's amendments, additions, and deletions thereto.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be adopted as read.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, seconded by Ms. Breyer, that this ordinance be adopted as read and requires a roll call.
Mr. Person?
Aye.
Ms. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Pavoni?
Aye.
Ms. Breyer?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, all ayes.
The ayes have it.
The next ordinance is regarding updated edition of adopted Washington codes with city amendments. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending sections 45051, 45055, 45090, 45100, 45110, and 45130 of Chapter 5, Building and Fire Prevention Standards of Title 4, Development Regulations of City Code, updating editions of adopted codes, and revising the city's amendments to the adopted codes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be adopted as read.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, seconded by Ms. Breyer, that this ordinance be adopted as read and requires a roll call.
Mr. Person?
Aye.
Ms. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Pavoni?
Aye.
Ms. Breyer?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, all ayes.
The ayes have it.
Next ordinance is regarding the adopting the new construction administrative code. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Chapter 5, Building and Fire Prevention Standards of Title 4 Development Regulations of City Code by adding a new section 45060 to be entitled Construction Administrative Code.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be adopted as read.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, seconded by Ms. Breyer, that this ordinance be adopted as read, and this requires a roll call.
Mr. Person?
Aye.
Ms. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Pavoni?
Aye.
Ms. Breyer?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, all ayes.
The ayes have it.
And the final ordinance for second and final reading is regarding adopting the 2012 International Fire Code. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Section 45070 of Chapter 5, Building and Fire Prevention Standards of Title 4 Development Regulations of City Code, adopting by reference the 2012 International Fire Code with the city's amendments, additions, and deletions thereto.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be adopted as read.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, seconded by Ms. Breyer, that this ordinance be adopted as read. This requires a roll call.
Mr. Person?
Aye.
Ms. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Pavoni?
Aye.
Ms. Breyer?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, all ayes.
The ayes have it. Thank you very much, Jason. Moving on to new business, Mr. Person.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have two items to talk about. First one is the Committee of the Whole. Next Monday, April 21st, will meet from 6 to 7 p.m. in the council chamber rooms. Two topics: Lindbergh High School robotics demonstration and recognition. And secondly, Renton Airport blast fence security wall artwork. And then my second topic is the fire chief stopped by the office today and asked me if I wouldn't be sure that all the council people took some of these 3x5 business cards, advertising for firefighters, and so because we most likely are out in a more diverse community than everybody else, and so if we can pass these out when we find somebody we think would like to come to work for the city of Renton. So with that, I'll pass them down if you'll take some. I know I'll make the fire chief happy.
Good.
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Person. Ms. Palmer?
That was nice. Okay, I don't have any committee meetings, but I would like to refer into the...
I'll keep all of them.
I'd like
He
to...
said you could get 1,000 of them if you wanted.
Sorry for the interruptions, Ms. Palmer. You've got the floor now.
Okay, I wanted to refer into the Transportation Committee the issue of Maple Valley Highway, including speeding, safety, city image, and anything else that comes up on that.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Palmer, seconded by Mr. Person, that the topic of the Maple Valley Highway be referred to the Transportation Committee to discuss speeding, safety, image, and other issues. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, I guess we can maybe, I guess we'll meet with Councilwoman Palmer to confirm so we can be ready as staff. I think we can do speeding, safety, and image. If there are other issues, we'll just want to be prepared. So we'll get with Marcy and figure that out.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. We've just had a couple of inquiries concerned residents.
Mr. Corman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to announce a Public Safety Committee meeting for April 21st, 5 o'clock p.m. to 5:30 p.m. It'll be in the council conference room. 2 items on the agenda: police department staffing, commission to non-commissioned full-time employees. And then the second item is ordinance amending the definition of administrator in Renton Municipal Code 1-3-2. And that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Community Services Committee will be meeting on April the 21st from 5:30 to 6 p.m. And we'll be meeting in the council conference room, and we will be discussing the Renton Airport Advisory Committee appointments. That is all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pavoni?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Utility Committee will be meeting on April 21st at 4:30 in the council conference room, and we will be discussing establishment of the South 132nd Street Sewer Extension Special Assessment District.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Breyer?
No Finance Committee to report.
Okay, and Mr. Prince?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, after today's ordinances for second and final reading, I think planning development has blown its wad. We have nothing to do. We don't have a committee meeting scheduled.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to audience comment, was anybody who wanted to address the council?
Mr. Mayor, sorry, is there considering, I meant to respond to some comments earlier, and you were so efficient, I didn't get it out beforehand, but I appreciated Mr. Ouellette's comment about our budget discussion last week, and I think it's always hard when for the newspaper reporters to try to capture an entire hour discussion into an article. I do just want to say for the public listening in that we certainly are sensitive and absolutely committed to reducing the city's costs. In fact, since 2008, our population has increased by over 30%. We have reduced our workforce by 13%, 101 positions. We've cumulative cut the budget by up to nearly $29 million. So we absolutely are all about efficiencies and cost cutting. The reality is we're facing a structural deficit. We've been facing that for a number of years. We've managed it as best we could. We are out of our bag of tricks. We have no tricks left to try to figure this out, and so we're going to have to decide something. It's either going to be reducing services, or we're going to have to address the revenue side. The expenditure side, we absolutely are committed to continue to do that, but we cannot cut another $28 million out of the budget and keep services the way they are. That's the reality that we are in, folks.
And one correction, the population has grown 56%.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, yes, Paul, go ahead. Now, please come to the podium.
Wouldn't it be nice then to send some information that Jake to the Renton Reporter and have the recant on their article so that the public would know what the administration is doing or trying to do?
Well, I had a little involvement with the Renton Reporter one time in my life, and
yeah, I know
those are things that you have to pick up as a reporter. That's one of the things that was made very clear in the presentation to the council, And we unfortunately reiterate it quite a bit because we've undergone a lot of cuts.
I think that the gist of the article that was in the paper really addresses the additional taxes and B&O taxes and stuff without saying what the administration is trying to do to cut the expenses. So it makes people like me say, hey, I live within my budget, how about you?
Yeah, no, we understand, and we don't take it personally.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate hearing your perspective, yeah.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Person, second by Mr. Prince, so we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
Smoke alarms in every bedroom, outside your sleeping areas, and on every